Hello everyone, welcome to this session. Our chapter is agriculture, and so far in the previous session we saw a simple introduction to this chapter, agriculture. Then we said there are kinds of or just types of the agriculture. So in this session we start discussing the first type of agriculture, that is the small scale agriculture. Now we'll start with the simple introduction to small scale agriculture. What is small scale agriculture? This is just the production of crops and livestock on relatively small pieces of land without using advanced technologies. So that's simply how you can define a small scale agriculture, is just the production of crops and keeping of livestock just on relatively small pieces of land without using these advanced uh, technologies. Now, the small scale farming, it requires just small plots of land, just not more than, for example, 4 hectares. So you can term the agriculture small scale farming when it requires just small these plots of land, for example, not more than 4 hectares. Now, so the small scale agriculture, it involves the cultivation of crops and keeping of livestock for both the subsistence and the commercial purposes. So you get why the small scale agriculture can be carried out. It involves the cultivation of crops and keeping of livestock just for these two purposes, the subsistence purposes and the commercial purposes. Now, where the farming is practiced for subsistence purposes, most of the process is reserved for consumption. So, when you term the small scale agriculture is for subsistence purposes, it means that most of the produce or the product obtained from the agriculture is just reserved for the consumption, and it can be carried out or it can be consumed just, for example, by the family members. So where it is practiced for the commercial purposes, most of the produce is just sold for cash just to earn income. So that's when you can know these purposes, why they are there. Subsistence purposes are there just to reserve for the consumption, mainly, for example, the family members, while when you term as for the commercial purposes, are just they are mostly just the produce just is there for being sold just to obtain cash as form to earn income. Now, let's see the various characteristics of the small scale agriculture as at subsistence level. So, the following are just characteristics of the small scale agriculture. So, we see the various characteristics of this small scale agriculture. First, the first one is that most of the labor produced or provided in this small scale agriculture is mainly by the family members, and it is manual in nature. So you can term the agriculture small scale when the most of the labor is just provided by the family members, and it is mainly it is manual in nature. So that's the first characteristic. The other is that farmers use the very simple tools, for example, hoes, mattocks, rakes, and the bush knives just to prepare the farms. So that's the other characteristic of the small scale agriculture. The tools that are used are just very traditional or just not that modern. That's why we term it small scale agriculture. It doesn't use the advanced technologies. So in some cases, ox plows are also used. So that's you can term the small scale agriculture. Uh, the other characteristic, the common ways that are used to improve the soil fertility includes the use of the organic manure, crop rotation, and the mulching. So these are just the common ways that are there when you term the agriculture as small scale agriculture. The common ways that are used just to improve the soil's fertility are just the ones that include as the use of the organic manure, the crop rotation, and the mulching. Now, the mulching is the one that involves the covering the topsoil with the crop residues and animal remains just to retain the moisture of the soil and hence facilitate the soil fertility. Moving on, the other characteristic of the small scale agriculture, farmers often plant different types of food crops on the farm. So, in terms of the small scale agriculture, it can be based on the farming based on plenty of various kinds of crops on the given farm. So, crops grown include the paddy, the beans, maize, sunflower, vegetables, and the other crops. The other characteristics, there is little or no surplus. So, in terms of the small scale agriculture, this subsistence level, as we said, is used mainly for the consumption. So they can be little or just no surplus obtained from the farming. In most cases, a large part of the production is used just to feed the family members, and the little surplus is the one that is just sold just to gain some little income just to manage the needs of the family. The other characteristic, the land cultivated for the subsistence farming is always small, and the total yield and the yield per area of the land are always small. So that's the other characteristic of this, the small scale agriculture. This is just because of the fragmentation of the arable land into small plots owned by the individual farmers. So that's the reason. The other characteristic, production mainly involves the use of the simple methods of cultivation, such as shifting cultivation. So that's the other characteristic of this small scale agriculture. It involves the use of these various simple methods of the cultivation, such as shifting cultivation, whereby this cultivation involves maybe at certain kind of a year there's this kind of a crop, then the next year they shift that crop to another plot, and the one that was at that plot comes to this the first plot. So it involves shifting the crops just to maintain the fertility of the soil. However, due to the shortage of arable land, farmers are slowly switching to crop rotation as the most common method of the cultivation. The other characteristic, there is little or no use of the advanced technology in terms of the seeds, fertilizer, and the advanced machinery and the equipment. So that's the other characteristic of this small scale agriculture. There's just no use or just very little use of the advanced technology in terms of the seeds that are used. Also the fertilizers, we've said they normally use the manure, or the advanced machinery are not there, or the equipment are just not there, or they are just not used. Most farmers also practice mixed farming, which involves the growth of crops and keeping of animals. So that's the other characteristic of this small scale agriculture. Uh, Examples of animals kept include goats, cows, and poultry. These animals, they provide the manure, which is the one that is used to improve the soil fertility of the farm. The other characteristic are usually poor storage facilities are the one that are used to preserve the yield, which may be destroyed by pests, insects, or just unfavorable weather conditions. So that's the other characteristic, whereby in terms of the storage facilities, they're just not very conducive, and they're just in poor shape, as the yield may be destroyed by these pests, insects, or just unfavorable weather conditions. Uh, so that's all I have for this session of the scale. And thank you for listening. We've discussed the small scale agriculture. We've seen the meaning or the concept of the small scale agriculture, and then we've seen plenty of the various characteristics of this small scale agriculture at subsistence level. So I hope that's clear, and thank you.